What's up guys, Mike Hamill here. Thank you for tuning into my channel today. Today I've got my good friend and also tattoo mentor, Chris Clements here today. And we're gonna be doing a little interview, a little Q&A from clients as well as Chris about my backstory, a little bit about my tattoo career, a little bit about my personal life. Many of these questions you guys ask, so I'd like to answer as many of them as possible. And here we go. Let's get this thing started.
When you first started out, besides me, what was your biggest inspiration? I'm just kidding. Well, I mean, I guess it's safe to say that you do lean on the realism part of your creativity, and
definitely, yeah.
And you try to expand that area. So, what's your inspiration to go that direction? And
it was realism from the jump, and that goes back to whenever I was a child. Like, I come from a very artistic family. My dad drew realism. He showed me drawings whenever he was in 8th grade that I couldn't do when I was 20 years old. And along the way, he stopped drawing. 3 out of 4 of my grandparents were oil painters, and it's just kind of something in my family that got passed down to me, and I just continued to do it. So I was blessed with that, to have an artistic background in my family. As far as tattooing goes, I mean, inspiration comes from everywhere. I've tried so many different styles. I've tried so many different niches. I've tried, I mean, you name it, I've done it. And early on in my career, I was like, I'm going to do this style, I'm going to do this style, I'm going to do this style. Inspiration comes from all over, whether it's local tattooers here in Dallas or whether it's Instagram or Facebook. Like, you see some dope shit, you want to try it. Artists inspire artists. So if somebody's doing something cool, like, a lot of times you want to try it. So I've tried it all. I really have. Once I started doing realism, it got a little more in depth with. So I was at a convention one time, okay? And I've lost so many times at conventions. I have. And I felt like I did a really good piece, and I was super confident in it. And we won a couple of trophies off of it, but I didn't get best of day, I didn't get best of show, and I was upset. I was, because I put everything into that particular piece. I tried so fucking hard on it, and it did good, but it didn't do good enough. And Jason Elliott, he was on Ink Master Season 10, he was one of the judges, and he came up to me afterwards, and he's like, hey man, your shit's good, it was dope, you won a couple of trophies off of it. He's like, but for best of day or for best of show, you have to do something more than just a picture. And that's what I was doing. I was doing color portraits, and so it was just a picture. And so I started looking into more of his work. For one, Dave Paolo, Jesse Ricks, Chris Rigoni, that all implement realism in their style, but it's out of this world with their creativity, and that's what I was lacking, was creativity. I started studying more of their work, and I started implementing more of that into my photos, and it worked. It started doing better. So I still do color portraits all the time, but whenever somebody tells me just to do whatever, I definitely get a little abstract, a little pop art with that particular piece, if the client allows it, which a lot of them do, and thank you all for that. But some of them want what they want, and sometimes you have to give the clients what they want.
Well, what about this? I guess it was inevitable with your love for sports and all, but you've gotten some notoriety on some sports related stuff, and that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, so I guess before art, my first love was sports. My dad's the biggest sports fan that I know. He was my coach growing up in baseball and football. And once I got into the realism side of tattooing, I started wanting to tattoo sports moments or sports characters, or instead of doing a color portrait, do an action shot of an athlete. And I've gotten to do a good handful of those, and I absolutely love it. Steve Butcher is where I kind of got that idea from. He is, oh man, top 3 realism artist in the world, easily, if not the best. Yeah, Steve Butcher Tattoos on Instagram. Check him out. He's Yeah, I could only hope to be as good as him one day. But yeah, so that was cool. I got asked to do a couple of pieces, and the Rugnet Odor Jose Batista punch was brought to me by a client. Like, that wasn't my idea at all. I did that tattoo, and it got shown on SportsCenter, ESPN, Fox 4 News, live at the Rangers game. And so that was pretty cool. And after that, like, that wasn't planned at all. So after that, I had a good friend of mine, Austin, who messaged me, and he's like, hey, you should do a tattoo of Mason Rudolph, Myles Garrett hitting Mason Rudolph with his own helmet. And I was like, nobody's going to want that. We're in Dallas. That was Cleveland and Pittsburgh playing. And I was like, fuck it. So I posted it on Facebook. I said I would do the tattoo for free. And lo and behold, there's a guy here in a little east of Dallas from Ohio, and that said he would get it. And so he did the tattoo. It took 11 hours. Once I posted it, within an hour, I had 4 or 5 news stations hit me up. It was locally, it was in Ohio, it was in Cleveland. I had a ton of Instagrams hit me up about it, asking for permission to share. And so that one was kind of planned after the Rugnet Odor one happened. And like, the thing is like, you can do a great tattoo, and then you're like, damn, like, this didn't get the recognition that I hoped that it would. However, if it's a controversial sports moment that involves violence, sorry, it blew up because of that. Like, I could have done a tattoo just as good that was something else, that was anything else, but because it was a sports moment like that and it was controversial, it blew up. And I'll be honest, like, half those comments were positive and half of them were negative. Like, I got so many, like, why would you do a tattoo like this? You're condoning violence. And yeah, like, I didn't care. I mean, hey, any comment's a good comment. Please keep them coming. And then one of the news stations that hit me up were like, hey, just to be, like, we want permission to share, but just to be clear, we're going to praise your work, but we're going to make fun of the client. And I was like, I said, hey, I'm a Cowboys fan. I have no hand in this. So yeah, any publicity is good publicity. And yeah, I do try to market myself in a way where I can do a tattoo that, 1, is good, but 2, people think are dumb. You know, a lot of people thought that tattoo was stupid, but because they thought it was stupid, it got so much publicity. And you know, one of the main comments that several people posted was like, wow, what a stupid tattoo, but it's good work. Go look at the artist. And it worked. You know what I mean? So I've done a couple of sports tattoos since then.
Have you tattooed any celebrities?
I have, right? a few, you know. So
what's your
like 2 weeks ago, I tattooed.
Favorite?
You can't ask me my favorite celebrity.
I'm trying to get you caught up.
No, so I actually on Instagram one time I posted "Ask Me Anything," and Jarrett Reddick from Bowling for Soup, awesome, who I've tattooed, I don't know, 2 or 3 times. He asked me, he's like, who's your favorite celebrity you've ever tattooed? And I was like, you can't ask me that, you know. So I've tattooed the lead singer for Bowling for Soup. I've tattooed Malik Collins, who played for the Dallas Cowboys for 4 years. Congratulations, by the way, Malik. He just signed a new contract with the Las Vegas Raiders. So I tattooed him like 2 or 3 weeks ago, right before he moved to Vegas. So
that's cool.
Super cool, super humble guy, very talented. Lee McKinney, the guitar player for Born of Osiris, he's a madman on the guitar. Super cool, super humble guy. Tattooed him. The rapper Stitches in Florida, y'all might know him from having some beef with The Game and all that YouTube videos.
Who won? I don't know.
Comment. No, there was a physical altercation there.
Oh, really? I don't know anything about it.
The guy I tattooed did not win.
That's fair.
So, Coach Jamal Mosley from the Dallas Mavericks. He's the assistant coach of the Mavericks. As far as like, you know, people of that stature, I think that's it. But more to come. I'll keep you tuned on that. It's definitely nerve-wracking because, like, those people, like, they get bothered all the time by everyone else. And like Malik Collins, like, I've been a Cowboys fan my whole life, and he comes and gets tattooed by me. It's the first NFL player I tattooed, and he's a Cowboy, was a Cowboy. So like, I wanted to ask him all these fucking questions, but I wanted to keep it professional at the same time.
Fanboy out.
And so the first time was on the inside of his bicep. I did a portrait of his late brother, rest in peace. And he was in some pain, so he was kind of quiet himself. The second time, like, we chopped it up. We we asked all kinds of questions that I won't get into. I got some dirty details on the Cowboys.
Oh, shit.
Which was super cool, but we won't get into that. But yeah, I didn't want to bother these guys. I wanted to keep it professional, but most of them it was just like tattooing another client. Every one of these guys that I've tattooed has been awesome, and they're just another person who has a cool fucking job.
Well, like speaking of nervous, let's talk about like what's a tattoo that you're like, oh shit, and pulled it off. We all have those moments if we're pushing ourselves. We're like, oh man, this was wild. What did I get myself into? That
list truly goes on, man.
Yeah.
Like if I'm doing something that I'm super pumped about, and I'm like, if I kill this, it's gonna blow up, or if I don't, like I can't even post it. You know what I mean? Like don't get me wrong, my clients are always happy, but there's like I'm my biggest critic, so there's pieces that I do that I feel like I dropped the ball on. As far as what piece was I most nervous on? I mean, it's all of them truly,
right.
Until I get started.
It's a loaded question, huh?
Yeah, it is, but
well, you wrote it.
There's pieces I'm nervous about that once I get 3, 4, 5 hours into, then I'm like, okay, I got this. But when I start, I'm truly nervous about every piece that I do. But I guess the biggest one that was kind of shitting myself before I even started was I did a Lord of the Rings piece, and it was Balrog, the fucking fire monster. When Gandalf is like, you shall not pass. Like I did that whole scene on a forearm, and like I laid the stencil, and I was like, what the fuck did you just get yourself into? And man, it's definitely up there with one of my favorite pieces. And
well, if you're pushing yourself, you're gonna find yourself.
Yeah, it was 10 hours on a forearm. It was one session. My client Jonathan is super awesome. He's just like, go for it. And I told him the whole time, like once, like it was like 3 or 4 hours in, maybe it was 5, but I got to a point and I was like, dude, I got this now. I was like, when I started this, I had no clue what I was doing or what I was looking at, but I figured it out. And he's like, you're good, man. So yeah, I mean, it's all pieces, but there's definitely some that stand out more than others.
For sure. It's like trying to pick your favorite kid.
They're all different ages, so it's hard to compare.
Right. Yeah. No, I have that problem as well. So do you prefer big projects over small ones, or they kind of like mix them up like I do? I mean, I love long projects and all, but sometimes it's nice to just knock out a banger, and you're like from start to finish in one setting, and you're like, all right.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yes. So right now what I'm doing is like a 4-hour minimum on projects. So I keep them at a pretty good size, Now there's definitely clients you've had for, I mean, I've been tattooing 10 years now. There's definitely clients that I'll budge on, and I'll do something, because like I feel like they've earned it as a client, you know what I mean? And instead of referring them to somebody else. So like 90% of the time it's larger project. I might knock them out in 6 to 8 hours, or they might have to come back for another session, but definitely bigger projects over smaller ones.
That's cool. I mean, just like convention style stuff. Speaking of that, like, do you plan on doing conventions since you own the shop?
Yeah,
moving around.
So we opened the shop on 11/11/2019, and conventions kind of took a hold for me. One, with the new baby, he's now 10 months old. His name's Carter. 2, owning a business. Like, this is my first time doing it, so it's been a lot. It's been good. It's been pretty smooth for the most part. But to answer your question, conventions have kind of took a halt for that. I was traveling around for the past 3 years, out of state, all over Texas for shows and doing competitions, and it was great. I met a lot of cool people. Like, I really, really enjoy it. In 2020, I had 2 conventions booked, and coronavirus hit. They were both local too, because I can't bring my wife, bring my kid to these things now, which we've always done. So there was 2 local conventions that were canceled due to COVID-19, and so now it's just kind of a wait and see kind of a thing. But do I plan on doing more? Absolutely. It's just owning a business, having a big family, that all kind of takes priority to going out of town and having fun. So will I get back out there? Yes. Just when is to be determined.
Well, I mean, speaking of like plague that's hit, where do you see this going? Do you think it's going to change much, except just tighten up on some restrictions or rules? I mean, we're pretty tight-laced anyway, so it's kind of hard to...
So I went live the other day on Facebook, and that was a very common question of like, what's going on with your shop? This is before we got allowed to open on the 18th. I personally, I think everything is smooth selling from here, but as well as other tattooers, I feel like they're in the same boat, that they feel the same way. But I don't know what everyone else that doesn't tattoo is going to say about it. You know, we were one of the last people to open, which I do. Like you said, we're bloodborne pathogen certificates. You know, we're clean. We sterilize shit great all the time, every day after every tattoo. Like, we have those certificates that nurses and doctors also have. I felt like we were kind of being stereotyped in a way. No offense, Greg Abbott, but he's a little older, you know, and I think back in his day, tattooing was biker gangs and drugs and this and that. And like, people truly don't understand, like, in my 10 years, how far tattooing has advanced, let alone what those older people in the state government or whatever you want to call it think about tattooing. So yeah, long story short, I felt like we were being stereotyped and people don't know how clean that we actually are.
But we're getting back to it now.
Oh, yeah, we're back. We opened 2 days ago. Yeah.
It's been different, but we're here.
Yeah.
Got to deal with it.
No face mask.
So I guess, you know, you just opened your shop, so it's pretty obvious to know what your plans are for the next couple of years. Concentrate on this place and
it's
cultivate a good crew.
It's definitely concentrating on this place. Luckily, we kind of had a good crew from the start. Opening a shop is an extensive plan, and we had ideas of who we wanted to bring in. There's been some small turnover since we've opened, but right now we have a full crew of 6, and everybody is awesome. So lucky to have that, very lucky to have that. Right now, like, there's no foreseeable changes in the near future that I could think of, because things are really running pretty smooth here.
That's good.
Yeah.
That's all you can hope for, really.
You hear horror stories about opening shops and about,
Yeah, I've told a few.
Yeah, like, this guy sucks and you got to fire him, and then this guy steals money and, you got to fire him. And, like, luckily, like, we got the crew together, we started, and it's been glue ever since. So, well, it's been a smooth ride.
Good. Yeah. That's good, man. Let's talk about, since, like, family and how they've been supportive, and how they've influenced your day-to-day operations.
Okay, so yeah, this goes back a little while. So one of the questions, and I know it's on there, that one of my followers asked me, and the answer is whenever I was 15, 16 years old and I couldn't get a job because, well, I didn't have a car. We had my dad remarried when I was 12. We had 5 kids living in the house, and my dad made sure we had everything we possibly had, but truthfully, we didn't have much more than that. We have everything we needed, and he did everything he could to make sure that, we had what we needed, and I'm forever grateful of that. My dad's the best guy on the planet. He really is. If I could be as good of a father as he is, then I'll be a happy man. So, no car, couldn't get a job. The places that I could walk to from my house weren't hiring. And my stepmom said, "You draw all the time. Like, why don't you start tattooing?" And I had one tattoo at this point. Whenever I was 16, I had one tattoo on my back. It was tribal.
Of course it was.
It's covered up now, but I thought it was so cool because I drew the design, and then I went to some guy's house and he tattooed it on my back. And truthfully, it wasn't that bad. Like, even 10 years into my career, like, I've seen way worse shit come out of a shop than what I got at this dude's house. But my stepmom was the one that said, "Why don't you tattoo? Like, you draw all the time. Like, you're into this tattoo thing right now." And I was like, "Oh man, like, maybe I should." For Christmas every year, our parents would just give us money and they would take us shopping. I bought a tattoo kit online. In high school, it was bad. I definitely fucked some people up tattooing, and that's kind of where it started. And this story extends, so I'm just going to keep talking here. I mean, I tattooed like once a month. You know what I mean? Like, nobody would get tattooed by a kid who couldn't do good work in the first place, but there were those people out there who were like, "Screw it, go ahead and put something on me." So then whenever I was a senior in high school, I found out I was expecting my daughter. And I planned on going into the Navy already, but when I found out I was expecting my child, I bumped the date up. So 9 days after I graduated high school, I was in boot camp getting yelled at. I stepped off of a bus in Great Lakes, Illinois, and people were screaming in my face and stuff. And so I started my military career, and the whole tattoo dream got put on hold. A couple years later, I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia, and I got my tattoo stuff shipped to me, and I was still being a scratcher, doing bad tattoos at home. And
the same kid?
And no, it was a different kid at that point. But what kind of drove me to pursuing it more is there was people on my ship that would get tattoos for me, but there were other people who got tattooed at local shops, and they're like, "Nah, you're not touching me." Yeah. And like that hurt a little bit, And I was like, "Well, how can I get better? Like, what can I do to get better?" I probably had like 2 half sleeves and a couple of random tattoos at this point. I don't know, probably 10 or 12 tattoos, and I finally went and got my first professional tattoo. I forget the shop's name, but a dude named Rob Medic did it, and I've kept up with him a little bit. He travels all around too. So he tattooed this cross on my forearm, and I bugged him about getting an apprenticeship at a shop because I wanted to get better. I knew that there was stuff that I didn't know that I needed to know, and being repetitive doing the same shit at home wasn't going to get me there. Didn't land an apprenticeship with him at that shop, but I went all around Virginia Beach and Norfolk, Virginia, and I landed an apprenticeship at a place called Blue Horseshoe Tattoo, owned by Chris Bowman. And there was 2 guys. Chris was super cool, kind of. He put me through some shit in that apprenticeship as well. But there was a guy named Sean Sweeney there. I ran into him at the Dallas Tattoo Expo that you and I were working at a couple years back, and he remembered me. It was super cool for him to see where I was at now, And also a guy named Mike McMahon. When I started working there, he did color realism, and I was doing Flash, I was doing stuff printed off the internet, when I started at this shop, and to see somebody kill a Freddy Krueger portrait or to do a whole sleeve of color portraits, my mind was blown, and that was before I met you, so, first, it was I worked there for 2 months, and I was in the military. I had a 2-year-old. Then I was getting off of work and going to the shop from 5 to midnight, and it just wasn't, I didn't know what kind of time tattooing really took out of your life until I started working at a shop, and I couldn't juggle it. So what I did was, I quit the apprenticeship, and like no one else that's listening should do, I continued to tattoo at home. And 2 months before I got out of the Navy, I emailed every single shop in Dallas that had an email address. I probably sent out 50 emails, and I got 3 responses. And I looked at everybody's work, and I chose to go with Stainless Studios, that's formerly owned by Rob Holland. And Chris worked there. Rudy Hetzer, that owns Dallas Tattoo and Arts, worked there. Our boy Rob Smith, Smitty, he worked there. So I had an apprenticeship lined up before I was ever even back in Texas, and that's whenever I met you and started there, and that was March of 2010.
Damn, that seems like a eternity ago.
Yeah. So
back on the block.
Yeah. So it was my stepmom that's like, "Hey, you should tattoo," and I was like, "No shit, maybe I should." And it was a rocky road from there, but it truthfully was her idea. I never even thought about it, until she mentioned that day.
Yeah.
All because I couldn't get a job.
It's funny how that you degenerate.
Yeah.
You're still there.
Yeah, I did. I did a lot of tattoos on myself. I still have some that I did on my leg that.
What are we talking about? Oh yeah, you tattooed your own leg. And it sucks.
Yeah, so no, it's so bad. It's all heavy black and solid.
Yeah.
Before I started the apprenticeship in Virginia Beach, I was tattooing at home, and I was a kitchen wizard, man. And I literally had my leg propped up like this at my kitchen table, just doing all kinds of terrible shit.
Right.
And it's still there.
That's amazing.
I'm not gonna show you guys.
Yeah, we all have these.
It's not good.
Trinkets, little accoutrements, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah. Well, I mean, that's interesting. Just to see all the progressions of tattoos that are even on us, man. Like shit you've done on me.
Yeah,
and I've done on you.
Shit we thought was cool.
Yeah, but I mean, it's still amazing.
A lot of it's great, but it's just man, that was me 6 years ago.
Well, tattoos are time capsules, man.
They are, and it's a timeline. I can remember who did every tattoo on my body, and where I was at personally in my life, and where I was at physically. I got tattooed overseas. I got tattooed in the middle of the ocean on my ship whenever I was on deployment, you know. So, yeah, it's just kind of a timeline. It's cool. It's cool to think about, like, I mean, shit, we got Nick York, Rob Holland, James Haynes, Smitty, you, Juan Cruz. What was Matt's last name at Stainless?
Matt
Thompson. You know,
Yeah,
and then
yeah,
my cousin David Hamill. And those are just on my fingers, you know. So imagine how long that list really is, you know. So, yeah, it's definitely a timeline. But you always look back at shit you did and you're like, man, like, if I could do that now, like, how much better would it be?
What's been your favorite one that you've got?
That I've gotten.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Just the funniest for you. Just be like, you know what? Don't worry about that.
I feel like there's a reason you asked me that question.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So
Now that actually paralleled into another question I have: is if you ever regret taking a break on the last game of 8-ball while we were on the best of 3. Is that ever a question that goes through your mind? Like, why did I take that break?
Oh, man, you know, that's a very gray area.
Yeah.
All right, so
It's one of my favorite memories.
all right, one night. So every time we played pool, Chris won more games than lost. And one night I was feeling froggy and I was whooping his ass. And I was like, best 2 out of 3, loser gets the other person's signature. And Chris is like, cool, bet. So I won the first game. We're on the second game, and we've got a couple balls left on the table. And this is back when Chris smoked cigarettes. Okay, I did too. It's kind of gross, but I did. And so we took a break with a couple of balls on the table to go outside. I was like a ball or 2 away from winning the second game, and it was done. He was getting my signature. I got cocky. We went outside. Came back in, and these old dudes took our table. And like,
I paid them.
wiped the balls off the table, and we were like, hey, cool, like, this is our table. We went outside, like, can we get it back after this game? And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem.
Kinda.
Should we tell that part too?
No.
Yeah, we shouldn't tell that part.
There might be kids watching.
Yeah, long story short, we got the table back. It wasn't that easy, but
Cutscene.
Yeah.
We got table back.
we got the table back. So we had to restart the second game that I was about to win. Chris won the second game. Chris won the third game.
Yes, I did.
His signature's on my body.
Yes, it is.
I'm not going to say where. But yeah.
Yeah, it's up to you to lose that one.
Yeah, so I lost the bet. That's probably the dumbest tattoo I have, honestly.
Oh, that kind of hurts, but I'll take it.
Take it.
That's one of my best memories, man. Oh, man.
Good for him, bad for me.
Maybe putting my portrait on Joe's leg.
Oh, yeah, dude, Joe's so good now,
I know.
man. He's doing, like, online seminars and stuff. I apprenticed with Joe. He's tattooing in Hawaii now. Killer black and gray artist.
I put my face on his leg.
Chris's face is on. At least it's not your face, you know,
Right.
on me. So.
Oh, okay, I get you. Yeah.
Well, probably would have been a cooler tattoo, but.
But dude, we've got so many laughs out of this.
Yeah.
It's still a laugh.
Yeah. No. Every time. What was the other question before you fucking got into that?
No, I was just asking you what your funnest tattoo was, and you're like, I'm suspicious.
Okay. My favorite tattoo that I have on my body. That's a hard one to answer because, like,
Picking a favorite kid again.
Yeah. Tattooers in general, like, we get tattoos on us because we enjoy the artwork. There's a lot of people that come to us that are like, I have to get something only if it means something to me, and we are not that way at all.
So I have a crab just to get a crab, bro.
Yeah. So Nick did that one too.
Yeah, Nick York.
So I'm gonna go through a couple of tattoos. Like, a couple of my sentimental tattoos is I have a portrait of my daughter on my calf that Liz Cook did. She owns Rebel Muse Tattoo. I'm sure a lot of you already know who she is. And my first job tattooing professionally was at Lone Star Tattoo, where Liz was working. I had no idea who she was. I had no clue about nothing. They just said, this is your spot. And it was the station next to Liz Cook. And I seen her tattooing my first day there. And I was like, oh, shit. You know, I was just this kid off the streets that could barely get by doing a decent tattoo. And, like, I did a tattoo that day, and it was some Old English with the black to red ombre, you know, and it was a clean little tattoo. But then she was doing like these fucking saturating whites and doing a realistic whatever, and I was like, okay. And that's when it didn't at all, and that's when it kind of set in, like, man, like I'm not shit,
right?
You know?
Put you in your place real quick.
I can learn so much from all these other people, and
I love it when that still happens.
So my daughter was, man, she was 2 or 3 at the time, and I asked Liz, I was like, can you do a portrait of my daughter? And that's also like, she was like, this photo won't work. And she does a lot of different styles now, but back then, like, she did realism in portraits, and she was like, this photo won't work, I need to see a ton of photos. And that's what I tell people now, like, if you're wanting the portrait, like, I need to see as many photos as I can, and I'm going to choose the best photo for the tattoo, you know, not your favorite photo that you want, because that may not be the best one for the tattoo. So the portrait that I have of my daughter is definitely one of my favorites. I have tattoos for all of my kids. They're not all portraits, but just, you know, this one for my son Ace, this one for my son Carter. So, and then on my head here, third one on Instagram, that's Third WUN. He is hands down the best lettering artist in DFW, and what this tattoo says is, it says above the storm. 1, it's one of my favorite bands, Stick Figure. 2, what it means above the storm, like, I guess I could compare it to like a phoenix tattoo. They're talking about rising. Everyone gets a phoenix because it's rising above the ashes and like coming up from a lower spot. And not to sound like negative like that in any way, I might have just screwed that one up, but that's like one of my wife and I's favorite songs, is because, like, you know, we went through what every couple goes through when you get together, not just with us, but with everything around us. It wasn't like a conflict between us two, but it was like the situation that we were going through together. But we rose above the storm. And so that tattoo is for overcoming stuff. It's also done very well. Like, Fabian is amazing at lettering. It has my wedding date in there. I love my wife. I don't care what anybody says. Yes, I have my wedding date tattooed on my head. And so that's a very sentimental tattoo to me, along with how well it's done. So that's one of my favorites. So another one of the sentimental tattoos I have that's one of my favorites is actually one you did for me, which is the Statue of Liberty on my neck and peeks onto my face a little bit. We altered that over the years. But it's funny, a lot of people see that tattoo and they're like, oh, are you from New York? And I'm like, no, like, I was in the military, so instead of getting like a big anchor on me that said USN, you know, I got the Statue of Liberty to represent America, you know, so that's definitely one. As far as favorite artwork, things that don't mean anything to me, there's several of them. The rib piece that your partner Brandon is doing for me is not done yet. Super dope. I went in there and told him, do whatever you want. You have from my armpit to my hip, all my ribs. And he created something pretty sick. Can't be shown yet, but it's definitely up there with one of my favorites. Yeah, so many. So like, I could get into that, but there's too many of them, honestly. So there's some sentimental ones, and there's definitely some favorites that don't mean anything at all. But artists love art, so
I think we all have those. We
get things that don't mean anything to us. We just enjoy artwork.
Those are my favorite.
Yeah, those are my favorite to do on other people. So.
Absolutely. Well, you know, when did tattooing first get your attention? When did you first notice tattoos when you were a kid? Like, how old were you whenever you started going, what is that?
Oh man, so my parents never had tattoos until I started tattooing. You know, I guess I was, you know, 4 or 5, 6 years old, something like that. Whenever, like, I just thought it was cool that artwork could be permanently on somebody's skin. And there's actually a picture that we'll post on here. It's me, and I'm the middle child. It's my older sister and my younger sister, and we're in a blow-up pool. And it's in the early 90s. Like, I have a red mullet, like back when I actually had hair, and there's a stick-on tattoo on my arm. And I remember we were at my grandma's house that day, and every time I went to my grandma's, I begged her to give me 25 cents so I could get stick-on tattoos in the little quarter machines at the front of like Walmart or Kroger or wherever they were back then. So I would always cover myself in these stick-on tattoos whenever I was a kid, and continued to draw and got inspiration from my dad and my cousins and all that. But no, like, I was I don't know, I think 4 or 5, whenever I started putting stick-on tattoos all over me, and it never stopped, you know, whether it was stick-ons or permanent, you know. Got my first tattoo when I was 15, so...
You were in it in the beginning.
Yeah, I was in it in the beginning, you know, like I was
cool with it.
a toddler whenever I was putting stick-on tattoos on my body, and like
Right.
the passion just grew from there to have something besides blank skin.
Now
you
you're a
know?
professional heathen.
Yeah. Professional.
Yeah, man. Well, you do have some questions from subscribers.